What did Yemen respond with? Well, we need to understand what Yemen said yesterday. Yemen yesterday said it's the beginning. And Yemen said yesterday that this is the first step of a full embargo on the state of Israel, of a full air embargo on the state of Israel. We are advising all of the international airlines to stop flying to the Gaza Strip, to Israel, excuse me. And that's it, no more. And today, we also had a statement coming from Muhammad al-Bukhaiti, the member of the political office in Ansarullah. He had an interview with Al-Arabi Network in which he clarified the position of Yemen. And he clarified, we will confront escalation with more escalation. Yesterday he was talking, and all of them in Yemen were talking about this is just the beginning. Today he's saying escalation will be met with escalation. And this attack on the Ben Gurion airport yesterday was only a warning message. It was only a warning message. Now, everyone is trying to link what Ansarullah in Yemen are doing to them being an Iranian agent and acting on behalf of Iran for geopolitical and financial purposes, and the list goes on with the typical propaganda, and that Iran arms them. Of course, the same sides don't talk about the United States from all across the oceans arming a colonialist supremacist entity in the heart of Palestine constantly to slaughter people. Likewise with other countries too. They don't talk about that. But they talk about Iran arming Yemen as if Yemen, has no independence and they have no will or their own determination or reasons to conduct any actions to stop a genocide, to stop war crimes as confirmed by international law. Very simple. Now, this is meant to instill the spirit of defeat in people. That, this is an Iranian project. They're just trying to wreak havoc and chaos. And what have they done? I mean, they're just sending, a couple of missiles here and there. Have you seen the responses in Israel? Have you seen them? And to some people, it's like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. You want people to sit down and do nothing? It doesn't make any sense. But what I wanted to share with you was actually a statement that came from another figure from Ansarullah, who is called Mujib Shamsan. Mujib Shamsan, he is in the Yemeni armed forces. He made a really interesting statement today, also in an interview that he had. He had an interview. The interviewer was telling him, I'm telling you this, by the way, because it just literally happened about 15, 20 minutes ago. I was showing you his picture. The interviewer asked him, where is this going to? Where are you exactly going to? People want to understand where is Yemen going to, and how is that linked to Iran? And are you an arm of Iran? And the man said in his own words, we are an arm of Palestine and we are an arm of the Palestinian resistance. We will attack and we will continue attacking with full force. That was a really sharp response. Very straightforward. We are an arm of Palestine. We're an arm of the Palestinian resistance. We will attack and we will continue attacking with full force. That's immediately after Israel was conducting attacks against Yemen. And this was so important. It's such a good reflection about Yemen's position and the Yemeni people's position in relation to Palestine. Everyone's trying to, show them as, Iran. Even there was a response from an Iranian official today who said that if you say that Yemen is an arm of Iran, you would be humiliating them. Yemen is acting on its own behalf for the sake of acting on behalf of the Palestinians, for the sake of the Palestinian people in Gaza who are suffering, and hardly anyone is doing anything. Countries pretending to be busy with their own problems, and Yemen, despite all of its problems, by the way, taking this position, and that's it, not really calculating that much. So In short, the Yemeni response was as follows. We're continuing. This was just a warning. We act based on our values, our faith, and our struggle to stop this genocide in Gaza and lift the siege of the Palestinian people. And this was just the beginning. This was just the beginning. And we're also very serious about the embargo, because one of them was asked also about how serious is Yemen and how are they going to implement this embargo and enforce this airspace shutdown in Israel. He told her, we're serious, and we spoke and we warned all of the airlines globally, don't go there because you would put yourself at risk and your staff and your crew and the people who you are bringing. And indeed, many airlines listened, over 20, cancellation, everything is canceled. And some of them are permanently canceling their flights to Israel after prolonged periods of cancellation. There was a time for review. Some of them canceled it indefinitely without stating when they're going to go back. So the situation is tense. Israel, of course, had this response today to show that this is very serious. It shows you how significant this attack was, by the way. The fact that Israel immediately went to Yemen and conducted this attack shows you how serious, how bad they were hurt yesterday, because they didn't do the same thing when many bases were attacked. They didn't do the same thing when the Ramat David base was attacked, or when Atserim was attacked, or Nevatim was attacked, their main air force bases. And other, of course, bases. They did not do that, but they did it when they landed a missile on Ben Gurion airport. It shows you, firstly, how highly secure Ben Gurion is and how serious the attack was for Israel, seeing as it penetrated its 4-layered air defense system. This is very important. Now, moving on to the next subject. Israel is now declaring a new operation, but there's a catch. There's something very interesting behind this. But let's begin with this report here. They're saying in Israel that Israel is setting a deadline for Hamas, as if any deadlines work. Deal by Trump's visit or Operation Gideon's Chariots. If their reference was to Gideon Levy, I mean, he has some articles that make a little bit of sense in Haaretz. I suggest that Netanyahu goes and reads some of them and acts on some of the things that Gideon Levy says in Haaretz. Gideon's Chariots, right? But what is this Gideon Chariot thing? That's the third campaign in Gaza. For those of you who haven't been following Israel's, it started with the initial campaign, the other campaign. I'm losing track, by the way, with the name, because Netanyahu changed it once to the War of Revival, and then the swords and the mud and whatever it is. Anyway, now it's Gideon's Chariots. All right, Gideon's Chariots. Why are you going in a new operation, and what does that mean? Firstly, the operation has been agreed upon by the small cabinet that included Bezalel Smotrich, who later started to brag that we are going to occupy parts of Gaza that we will never be retreating from, even if it's in relation to the Israeli prisoners of war, which made, again, the families of the prisoners of war in Israel very mad. But this operation, firstly, it's a threat, hinting that, well, the first hint that we're getting from this operation is that actually Donald Trump might come and impose a solution. That's the first thing. Who knows? Maybe not. Secondly, they're saying that we're going to occupy larger parts of Gaza and we are going to have a bigger operation. But there are multiple problems with all of Israel's reporting, to be fair. And there are many reasons to believe that this is all garbage and propaganda, by the way. And like test balloons and trying to brainwash the public. Why? Because in the actual plan, this Gideon's Chariots, they're saying that we will not be going into areas inside of the Gaza Strip where there would be a risk to the Israeli prisoners of war's lives. What do you mean then? Is the operation totally detached from the prisoner? So it's not about releasing them. Secondly, how do you know where they are? Well, the Palestinian resistance didn't tell you where they are. Either a lie to try and downplay it and show the families of the prisoners of war, look, there's not going to be much harm, so just tone it down slightly. Or it's a completely pointless operation. This whole genocide started because Hamas imprisoned Israelis, didn't it? But it quickly became something else. And now Netanyahu is proving this day after day. So he's saying occupying parts and we will not leave. And even if we go in and we reach a deal later on, we're not going to go back to the same parameter locations that we were in back in March, and lots of promises. And what I can sense from this is a lot of lip service to please Bezalel Smotrich so that he can make him happy. And delay. So long as Netanyahu delays, it's fine from his perspective because I can find the solution later on. This is how he views it. So let's say he temporarily pleases the people who are troublesome in his government or apply a lot of pressure on him, yet he pretends to do something else later on, like he has done with every ally in every government, by the way. That's why you see so many people who have been ex-allies of Netanyahu, either a minister. Yair Lapid was a treasury minister or minister of finance. Gantz was under him too. All of the Lieberman, who criticized them heavily, was the deputy, and he had all of them were so tight and close with him, but they left him and became such harsh critics after they dealt with him, and were revealed to this psychopathic, egocentric individual who cares about nothing but himself and his nuclear family. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe his son and wife, or his two sons. However, he might please him temporarily, only for him to buy more time, because buying time is Netanyahu's game. The United States has been playing ball with that. Anyone who hasn't taken action against Israel is playing ball with that, buying Benjamin Netanyahu time, talking for the sake of just pretending to talk, to diffuse any tensions and whatever, and to show the world that, yeah, we're talking, but really and truly he's not interested in just talking, and he wants to continue this up until he secures either the next elections or makes his position in Israel very solid and an absolute autocratic dictator inside of the state of, or maybe he'll declare himself the king of Israel. So he can change that, especially if there's something serious and substantial from Donald Trump that will be implemented, not just talk. Because Trump is now saying, oh, the people in Gaza are suffering. The people in Gaza suffer. They need food, they need medicine. And, it's Hamas, they're stealing the food, but we're going to feed them. We're going to help them. He's showing that something is coming, but he's not really saying who's causing the starvation. Who's causing the starvation? Donald Trump. Who is imposing a blockade? Who's not allowing aid in? Who breached the ceasefire? Who slaughtered 52,000 people, with now countless people missing, over 10, 15,000 and 120,000? Who did all of that? There's someone. But that's when the politicians start to play like the mainstream media. People die in Gaza. 3 killed in a strike, Next thing they'll say, people died as an act of God in Gaza. Something happened. Without saying who the perpetrator is, without saying who the savages are, who the depraved monsters committing this barbarism are. Why? Because they're tied with them. And the people protecting Israel, well, they have a very rich history of genocide and enslavement against other nations, don't they? So what Israel is doing in Gaza is peanuts to them. Those who killed millions in Africa and Asia and Latin America, that's nothing to them. 50, 60,000 in Gaza. Nothing. That's why they're protecting them. You need to understand. Okay, but what is the highlight about this operation, this Gideon's chariots? The highlight of this operation is Israel is admitting that the previous operation failed. Look at this. Israel is now fully and clearly admitting that Operation Strength and Sword failed and it did not meet the plans. And now the new round of operation has also been given a new name, Gideon's Chariots. The voluntary transfer program for Gaza's residents, voluntary, especially for those who will be concentrated in the south outside of Hamas control, will be part of the operation goals. Look at how many things there are in this title. Firstly, thankfully, alhamdulillah, Israel is admitting that they failed. Some people were, when I used to say that this is a whole failure and people fail, they used to go like, oh, what are you talking about? Look, they destroyed it. Yeah, the destruction to cover up the failure. Now, thankfully, they're saying failure. Okay. Then, well, what have you been doing all of this time? What kind of a message are you sending to the world? Have you been actually doing anything to achieve your military objectives, or were you just now confirming yet again that you've been only killing babies and infants, committing an infanticide, a genocide, and everything side in Gaza? Then they added a new aim to the war. This is an indication that it's there to please Smotrich. Why? Because the new objective, he added a new objective, the voluntary transfer. That's Smotrich, by the way, asking Netanyahu to add it. And then Netanyahu added it so that they can say it. But the really interesting bit here in this sentence is, and that's an article in the Israeli Ma'arif, by the way, translated to English, is that especially those who will be concentrated in the south, outside Hamas control. Did you see how everything goes the opposite way? They were saying Hamas was eliminated from the north, then we need to go to Rafah. They were saying that from the beginning. Then they went to Rafah. Then they started to say Hamas is back in power. And they went back to the north. Now they're saying Hamas are no longer in the south. What are you talking about? Don't you have any sort of common sense? Like they have dementia, the people who are writing this and the people who are stating this, or that they lie so much that they start to believe their lies. Thankfully, some of them admit in Israel that Hamas has never been dismantled. The talk about the 20 brigades of Hamas being dismantled, I spoke about this in previous videos and discussed how Netanyahu manipulates the reports that he gets from the security services in Israel when they tell him that, for example, we think that we killed 50 to 100 fighters, most likely civilians, but they will tell him that. In the Rafah area, Israel estimates, because they don't have definite figures, that each brigade has, 700 or 800. They say 50 to 100 killed. Netanyahu will say we dismantled the brigade and we totally eliminated their chain of command. Therefore, they cannot communicate. Everything was, of course, debunked on the ground and debunked from Israeli security sources who are not directly managing the current campaign and are at more liberty to talk. But the main thing about this now is that Israel is admitting that it has been failing in all of the past operations inside of the Gaza Strip. Therefore, they're coming with this new move, this new operation in Gaza, as the final deal for Hamas. If again, conditional, if Donald Trump wouldn't be able to reach a deal in the region. Now, next thing is the West Bank. So Israel has been conducting a genocide in the West Bank. Israel has been expelling people from their homes. Israel has been killing people, over 50,000 displaced. And now they are saying that they want to destroy over 100 homes in Tulkarem. How? Why? And why is hardly anyone talking about it? Well, they're saying that it's part of their action inside of the West Bank, because this is a military need and they want to improve the mobility of the soldiers. They want to improve the mobility of the soldiers. Therefore, they want to demolish 100 homes in Tul Karim and Jenin. Do you know what's 100 homes? 100 families. People living there. People living there. Look, they destroy them. They spray the Star of David on their home. People are living there. Why? Because we want our tanks to move in freely. And all of this is happening under the world's watch, by the way. Things like that happened before. Not at this scale. Today's scale is like much larger because of the enablement, by the way. Because of how enabled they are now by the United States and other countries, and by the lack of appropriate and relevant action that had to be taken against them from way before October the 7th for the apartheid and constant oppression and aggression against the Palestinian people, suffering under them for over 70, 80 years. But they're continuing that in the West Bank, and it's going quietly, by the way. The West Bank is going through a mini Gaza scenario in terms of destruction, in terms of displacement, in terms of killing, in terms of arrests, in terms of burning people's homes, kidnapping people. All of that is still happening in the West Bank. And in another show of their savagery and barbarism, look at what they've done in Gaza. They blew up a building and started to laugh about it as they put ink, paint inside the house, and they called it a gender reveal bombing in Gaza. It's a boy, they said. Israeli soldiers filmed themselves blowing up a building in Gaza while laughing that blue smoke resembles a gender reveal. The next level, these people, it's like they are beyond description even. These houses in the Gaza Strip, again, they destroyed the majority of the houses and the infrastructure. They are destroying houses more than once. So they land the bomb, they destroy everything, no one can live there. They go and target it again, an already destroyed place. So even if someone built a tent or whatever, or tried to come back and they will bomb it again. It's because they don't have targets, like what they're doing in Yemen, by the way. Shows, of course, they like to highlight their savagery, and thankfully it's being documented to the whole world. What these imbeciles don't understand is that they are proving to the whole world, giving the whole world evidence about their crimes forever, by the way. That's probably not their initial intention. Their initial intention is to boost the morale of a defeated nation, to boost the morale of a humiliated nation that had its head put in the sand of Gaza and has been humiliated and defeated. And they try and raise the morale of this supremacist nation by showing them acts like this. Oh, look, we're still destroying, or, stealing kids' toys, doing women's underwear and all of that stuff. They're still doing that to this day. Now, moving on to the final bits that I wanted to talk to you about here. And these are in relation to Iran. So the attacks that are happening, Netanyahu said, we're going to attack their masters, didn't he? But he started with attacking Yemen. But very suspicious things have been happening in Iran. Not many of them are. Israel is reporting some of them. Now, how is that linked to them being potentially behind this? We still don't know. Officially, Iran did not confirm that Israel was behind the Bandar Abbas port explosion, the other explosion that happened later on. Now, Israel is saying that there were multiple explosions in Iran, and their commando is suffering a huge blow, according to them. But what we're seeing is, well, various reports of various explosions happening in Iran. There was another report saying that, oh, an underground ammunition depot has been hit. Something is happening in Iran, and something is happening consecutively. You don't have coincidences like that. As a matter of fact, the one with the port was already suspicious anyway. 4 explosions, not one explosion, happening simultaneously, which indicates that this is a case of sabotage. But then later, more explosions happening like that, timed with simultaneously with all of these escalations happening, with Yemen striking Ben Gurion, Israel retaliating and increasing, the talks that are happening between the United States and Israel's interest in hindering any prospect of reaching a deal. Netanyahu ideally wants the US to attack Iran and have a coalition that would potentially include NATO with Iran. But I mean, good luck recruiting the world for your war. You're not able to recruit the Israelis for your war. Over 50% of Israelis are refusing to serve. You want to recruit what? Europe for you, or who? Even the United States is facing so much resistance, internal resistance from people from within, veterans and people who are in the army as well, intelligence speaking up as well, people who resigned from the Biden administration too. But the what's happening in Iran is quite suspicious. You don't have attacks like that without any reason. Multiple mysterious, they're calling them. Other reports said mysterious attacks happening in Iran. Motorcycle factory in Mashhad, the country's north. Another one warehouse, another one ammunition, all of that. So that's quite serious. Is Israel having a covert operation, covert sabotage operations inside of Iran to try and destabilize the country and potentially push Iran for a bigger attack or a response? Are they trying to make Iran attack Israel? Well, that could be an attempt. But from an Iranian perspective, Iran knows the situation that it's in. Firstly, they're trying really hard to show that what Yemen is doing is pure Yemeni. And there are many reasons to believe that, by the way, despite Iran supporting them. There's nothing wrong with Iran supporting another country. Like, other countries support other countries. Absolutely legit. Totally fine. Let alone if it's a country doing things against a genocidal entity. I mean, that's the international community's duty, isn't it? However, Iran is saying that we have nothing to do with it. They made their own decision. Yeah, we might be cooperating with what we have before, but they make their own decisions, and these people decide to continue, and they are taking this action to target Israel because it's committing a genocide. We have nothing to do with it. We attacked Israel. We attacked them twice, but we attacked them as a response to their aggression against us. Now, they're not likely to take action, as in Iran, unless they have a very solid proof or have a very solid declaration of an Israeli attack against them. That's not to say that they're not in a position to, but no, they are in a position. As a matter of fact, international law grants Iran and other countries to conduct a preemptive strike against Israel. Why? Because Israel is a terrorist entity committing war crimes with a wanted war criminal and threatening its region altogether, constantly carrying out strikes against everyone. In Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Iran, threats against Jordan and Egypt, threats against Saudi Arabia too sometimes. This is a country that is a destabilizing force, a genocidal force. Therefore, Iran is entitled to carry out a preemptive strike whenever it wants against Israel. But that clearly isn't the path that it chose, for multiple reasons, for internal politics reasons, for reasons to do with their general approach of not really wanting to be in conflict, but wanting to dispute, to resolve disputes through peace, by diplomacy. It's Israel and its backers who constantly have the hostile approach towards Iran, towards any other country that has any level of independence and acts based on its national interest, its people's interests, and has full sovereignty, and doesn't shy away from declaring that, and doesn't lick the boots of anyone. So if they come up at some point in Iran with a proof, evidence that, look, Israel indeed did this operation, or if they don't, but say, we have no doubt that Israel conducted this operation and they said they're going to attack us, therefore, bang. That's the situation where Iran could attack Israel, unless that is Iran surprises us, like they surprised us back in April 2024. No one thought, hardly anyone thought that Iran would attack Israel in April 2024. Even I myself said that. I said, I don't think Iran would attack Israel before they attacked them. In April, they conducted one of the largest, not the largest at the time, drone attacks against the country with, of course, ballistic missiles. Then that was followed by the October. So that was called True Promise 1. Then October followed. So notice they gave a gap, that there was a time there, half a year. And now we're just half a year from October 2024, meaning similar timeline. Now we already passed the timeline that Iran had between True Promise 1 and True Promise 2. This could be also another signal that something might be coming close, especially if the talks with the United States deteriorate. If Iran sees that Trump is really not that genuine, he's not interested, and he is in the pockets of the Israelis, if he is in the pockets of Netanyahu. Because what we've seen so far is the United States is a foreign agent. Every United States president is a foreign agent for Israel. They do things for Israel, prioritize Israel. They send more money to Israel than they do for their own people going through catastrophes and hurricanes and disasters. So if they reach that point in Iran, they might say, okay, it's going to fail with the US. They gave everyone evidence. So if there are any certain voices internally in Iran that don't necessarily want more, I mean, many people don't want more anyway, but who will criticize them, look, we sat with them. First, we had agreement, they withdrew, not us. We spoke with them before, we spoke with them again, we gave them another chance. Look, they withdrew. What are we left with? So understand our position. And in relation to international law, by the way, Iran still plays that very clearly. So with every attack that they conduct, they will tell you this was based on international law, and they give references, UN Charter, and that's why when some European countries, when some genocide supporting ex-colonies, ex-enslavers of other nations started to criticize Iran for retaliating against Israel, they didn't say they breached international law. They said, we condemn Iran's attack against Israel. But they didn't say they breached international law, because they did not breach international law. They did not breach any line of international law. So if it reaches that stage, or if Israel, during any process with the United States, goes and actually conducts an attack against Iran and admits and takes responsibility, then we will see an Iranian response, unless, again, there would be a surprise.